Tony and the homeless population. The homeless population has been increasing in Colorado. In the year 2014, the population went from around 1,700 to over 3,000 individuals in the city of Pueblo alone within just a few months. So society is left questioning, how do we interact? How do we engage with the population? And how do we support and take care of this population? Okay. The family and community that I witnessed within the homeless shelter was actually pretty outstanding. The shelter facilitates families of two parents, and single adults, but everybody was really helping each other be successful by providing for allergies, dietary restrictions, and even making sure that people ate if they had worked a late shift. Within a journal by Hinton and Castle, I was told I should expect within the family structure some vulnerability, anxiety, nervousness, mistrust, and maybe even anger and violence. However, that's not what I witnessed. The kids that I spent time with and even just sat back and hung out watching was the children were excited and sociable. The concept of money was somewhat structured here at the shelter. All residents are required to have a job or show proof that they're searching for a job. And then with that job, a savings account is created for the resident, which they are supposed to deposit money into for future housing. Not their entire check, but a portion of it. However, with these obligations that the shelter does hold for the residents, it was great to see the generosity. Some residents were spending money for a special treat shelter-wide, and some were sharing cigarettes or buying treats for certain individuals. It was kind of a really good example of their community. One resident definitely made a point of explaining her priority of safety over money due to the fact that she needed her 9-year-old daughter to have her own cell phone. The education within the Guadalupe shelter was actually pretty consistent. Most residents had a GED or a high school diploma. Many also were getting on-the-job training with trade skills and technology training classes with these new jobs that they were getting. Within the shelter, there were assistance programs for parenting, addictions, financing, and many other classes just to help support the residents at the shelter to be more successful in their future endeavors. And because of the lower income and the lack of housing, there are actually many grants and scholarships available to this population if they have the support to be able to go and obtain these. One resident did have that support, and she was able to enroll in her associate's degree for psychology with a focus on addictions. The concept of politics was observable within the power levels within the shelter. The residents who were willing to invest more of their time and energy into processes that needed to be done within the shelter were entrusted with power and responsibility, and that ended up creating roles of leadership. The residents who only showed up for meals or sleep ended up having less responsibility, less role and power within the center. However, the shelter also tried to support the residents in stepping out of their poverty levels with the classes and addiction training and the support in getting the grants and obtaining jobs. The Guadalupe Shelter was a religious organization that opened up a homeless shelter. So there is a chapel on site, but all religious activities and documents are actually contained mostly within the chapel, with the exception of the quote from 1 Thessalonians 5:11 hanging on one of the walls. This actually poured a lot into the moral code of conduct that I witnessed within the shelter, just that community of supporting each other and holding each other up. The associations for the homeless population are all of the shelters, but also the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. It supports the homeless within different shelters, different programs, and all stretching out through Colorado. Attached to this slide is a link to what they did in the year 2014, if you're curious to see. The health of the shelter residents was really well supported by the shelter's staff and procedures. They had doctors available and different clinics and transportation to the different clinics for as many opportunities as possible. However, seeing doctors and obtaining prescriptions takes time and is expensive and sometimes just aversive to different residents. So there were other local personal remedies to treat certain ailments and illnesses. The diet and exercise of the residents was actually pretty well balanced with the 3 square meals a day and walking everywhere they went. But the mental health was the best support that I recognized within the shelter because the shelter connects with True North Behavioral Health, and within that partnership, they have a great support system of staff and volunteers.